Most of us aren't lacking drive. We aren't even lacking self-control. What we lack is clear understanding. It's not that we're sluggish or unable, it's that we haven't genuinely linked with the purpose behind our actions. And when the reason is unclear, taking steps feels burdensome. It feels compulsory. It feels like labor. Consider the last time you delayed something crucial. It wasn't because you didn't know how. It likely wasn't even because you lacked time. It was because something within you hadn't committed yet. You hadn't discovered a convincing enough motive to proceed. That's the secret we seldom discuss. When people say push yourself to act, they usually jump straight to methods. Wake up earlier, create a task list, set a countdown. But all of that is approach. None of that functions without direction. None of that functions without purpose. When individuals act with intention, the vigor appears, the bravery appears, the dedication follows. It's not about having all the solutions. It's about being linked to something significant enough that it propels you forward, even when it's tough. I once conversed with a young business person who had all the instruments. He had the funds, the connections, the abilities, but he couldn't begin. He would discuss his creation, his market approach, his brand vision, and yet weeks would pass, and he'd still be in the preparation phase. He kept stating, "I just need to drive myself." But the reality is, pushing only functions for so long. We exhaust ourselves when we depend solely on pressure. But when I inquired why he was constructing this, what the purpose was, why it was important to him, he paused, a long silence. Then finally he said, "I don't know. I think I just wanted to demonstrate I could do it." And that was it. No surprise he was stuck. He was constructing something for the sake of pride, not influence. He didn't lack action. He lacked harmony. When we don't know why we're doing something, opposition becomes louder. Every justification makes sense. Every diversion becomes tempting. Every barrier feels heavier. But when the why is clear, everything else, the how, the what, the when, becomes secondary. Clarity cuts through resistance. You can perceive when someone knows why they're doing what they're doing. They carry a different kind of vigor. It's not louder, it's deeper. You can hear it in their voice, see it in their choices. They're not reacting, they're responding. They're not waiting to be instructed what to do. They're already in motion. Not because it's easy, but because they believe in the result. It's tempting to believe that success is a matter of more action, but it's not just about more, it's about aligned action. Forced discipline without purpose feels like punishment. But when action is rooted in something you believe in, it becomes meaningful effort. It becomes a mission, not a chore. And here's the twist. Clarity doesn't always come before action. Sometimes you only discover your why through doing. But you have to be willing to ask the question. You have to pause long enough to consider, what is it about this that really matters to me? Who will be affected if I don't show up? What kind of person am I becoming through this process? Because if your why is just to look successful, to fit in, to avoid judgment, that won't hold up. That won't sustain action when it gets hard. That won't carry you when results are delayed. But if your why is anchored in contribution, in legacy, in growth, now you've got something powerful. Now you've got something that can outlast any bad day. And clarity doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be some grand mission statement. It needs to be true. It needs to be honest. I want to be present for my family. That's a why. I want to prove to myself that I can finish what I start. That's a why. I want to solve a problem that's been ignored for too long. That's a why. And when you find it, even the hard days feel worth it. Even the tedious tasks feel connected to something bigger. The truth is, we don't need to force ourselves to take action. We need to invite ourselves to understand why it's worth it. When you feel connected to your cause, you don't have to be told to keep going. You'll find a way. And even when you stumble, even when you fall short, you won't give up because it matters too much to walk away. That's the power of starting with clarity. It's not about motivation tricks. It's about meaning. It's not about hustle. It's about alignment. When you align your actions with something you believe in, it doesn't feel like forcing anymore. It feels like answering a call. So the next time you find yourself stuck, hesitating, procrastinating, don't just look for a productivity hack. Ask a deeper question. What is the reason I started this in the first place? Who am I doing this for? What's at stake if I don't follow through? Because action without clarity is noise, but action rooted in purpose, that's where real momentum begins. And that's how you stop forcing yourself and start driving yourself from the inside out. It's this ideal we carry around, that once we get motivated, then we'll act, that once we feel ready, we'll move. But life doesn't really work that way. If anything, the opposite is true. The first step often comes before the belief. And the truth that most people don't like to admit is this: taking action requires discomfort, not just accepting it, but welcoming it, because growth never comes wrapped in comfort. We are wired to seek safety. It's biological. Our brains look for patterns, familiarity, predictability. So the moment we think about doing something new, something uncertain, something bold, our instincts scream, "No, too risky." And the easiest way to stay safe is to stay still. Don't make the call. Don't send the email. Don't raise your hand. And yet, we know that nothing changes in comfort zones. Comfort zones are great for recovery, but they're not designed for transformation. Every meaningful step forward in your life will ask you to stretch, to step into uncertainty, to confront fear, and yes, to feel pain. But that's not a flaw in the system. That is the system. Discomfort is the tax we pay for progress. It's the toll at the gate of every worthwhile goal. You cannot build a stronger version of yourself while clinging to what makes you feel safe. It's fascinating how we reframe this in hindsight. Ask anyone who's accomplished something they're proud of, whether it's starting a company, rebuilding a relationship, running a marathon, and they'll tell you about the struggle. They'll tell you about the self-doubt, the resistance, the days they wanted to quit. But they'll also tell you something else. They don't regret the pain. They're grateful for it because it shaped them. It made the achievement mean something. We live in a time where convenience is king. Almost everything is optimized to avoid friction. But meaningful action is not supposed to be frictionless. The problem isn't that discomfort shows up. The problem is that we think it's a sign to stop. We confuse resistance with a red light. But resistance is often a green light in disguise. It means you're stepping into territory where growth actually lives. I once met a woman who had been wanting to speak on stages for years. She had the story, the passion, the voice, but every time an opportunity came up, she turned it down. "I'm not ready," she said. "I get too nervous. My heart races, my hands shake, I feel sick." I looked at her and asked, "What if that's not a sign that you're not ready? What if that's a sign that you are?" You see, she thought the nerves were proof she should back off. But nerves are proof that you care, that this matters to you. And the irony, the moment she reframed her discomfort as part of the process, not a barrier to it, she finally stepped on that stage, and she crushed it. We all wait for fear to disappear before we move, but fear doesn't vanish with time. It vanishes with action. The longer you wait, the louder fear gets. The more you hesitate, the heavier the weight becomes. But the moment you lean in, the moment you embrace the fear and take that first shaky step, it begins to lose its power. No one is immune to discomfort. The difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to act anyway, to feel the fear, to carry the doubt, to bring the uncertainty with you and still move, still send a message, still raise your hand, still take the leap. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you embrace discomfort, the more comfortable you become with it. You begin to build tolerance. You start to recognize the signals, the racing heart, the shaky hands, and instead of retreating, you reframe them. You say, here it is. This is the moment. This is the edge of growth. And you go. Most people wait to feel confident before taking action, but confidence is not the prerequisite, it's the result. You build it in the doing. You earn it through the repetition, the trial and error, the missteps. There's no shortcut to that. But every uncomfortable step adds weight to your identity. You're not just doing the thing, you're becoming the kind of person who does hard things. We need to stop glorifying ease. We need to stop chasing the path of least resistance as if it's the ultimate goal. If your goal is to grow, then the struggle is not the enemy. It's the evidence. You are not falling behind when it gets hard. You are falling into place. So when you hear that voice in your head, the one that says, "This is too much, you're not ready, this is uncomfortable," recognize it. Don't silence it, but don't obey it either. Thank it for trying to protect you, then act anyway. Because the future you want, the stronger, bolder, braver version of you, is not waiting in your comfort zone. It's waiting in the discomfort. It's on the other side of the phone call, the presentation, the first step, the risk, the moment that makes your heart race and your stomach flip. You don't need to eliminate this comfort to take action. You need to expect it, to face it, to lean into it with intention. Because on the other side of this comfort is not just achievement, it's transformation. And that's worth every single uneasy step. There's a difference between motion and action, a big one. It's subtle, but it matters. Motion feels like progress, but only action creates progress. Motion is getting ready. Action is getting it done. And if we're being honest, most of us spend a lot of time in motion, planning, preparing, overthinking, and not nearly enough time actually doing the thing that scares us, the thing that matters, the thing that would change everything. There's a reason we stay in motion. Motion feels safe. It's productive without being risky. It gives us the illusion of momentum without the vulnerability of commitment. You can plan a product for months without ever launching. You can outline a book for years without writing a single chapter. You can research, brainstorm, gather feedback, build spreadsheets, and still be in the exact same place you started. But action has weight. Action carries consequences. The moment you act, you're exposed. You can be judged, you can fail, and that's terrifying. So we stay in motion. We convince ourselves we're working, and we are, but we're not moving forward. We're orbiting the goal, hoping that preparation will be enough to protect us from discomfort. But it never is, because progress doesn't happen in the realm of safety. It happens in the doing. The real change, the real growth, the real breakthroughs, they live on the other side of imperfect action. On the other side of starting before you feel ready. Because let's face it, if we waited until we felt fully prepared, nothing would ever begin. We have this idea in our minds that the people we admire, the ones who are out there making things happen, they must have known what they were doing. They must have had it all figured out. But they didn't. They just started. They took a step, not knowing how it would turn out, and then another, and another. Confidence was built through the act of moving, not the comfort of planning. One of the most common things I hear from people is, "I just need a little more time to think about it." It sounds reasonable, it sounds responsible, but if you're honest with yourself, how many times have you used that phrase to delay something you were afraid of? How many times have you used thinking as a way to avoid acting? We mistake motion for progress because it's easier to track. We can list the meetings we've had, the research we've done, the goals, but none of that means anything if it's not followed by action. You don't get in shape by reading fitness blogs. You don't build a business by attending webinars. You don't change your life by thinking about changing your life. Progress is built in real time, in messy drafts, in awkward conversations, in failed attempts and lessons learned. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but it's honest and it moves you forward. There's this moment we all face, the tipping point between preparation and movement. It's the moment where you've done enough thinking, enough planning, enough waiting. The only thing left is to begin. And that's where most people freeze. Because beginning is hard. It feels like a cliff. But more often than not, it's just a step. A small step with a big emotional weight. The irony is, once you start, the fear begins to shrink. Not disappear, but shrink. Because action creates clarity. You learn by doing. You discover what works by trying. You gain confidence by confronting the thing head on. It's not about being reckless. It's about being courageous. It's about understanding that forward movement always feels awkward at first. But that awkwardness is part of the process, not a sign to stop. So many people stay stuck because they want the perfect plan. They want to know every detail, anticipate every outcome, eliminate every risk. But life doesn't give us guarantees. Life gives us opportunities, and they're often disguised as uncomfortable moments, half-formed ideas, uncertain steps. And if you wait for certainty, you'll miss them. Starting before you're ready doesn't mean being unprepared. It means recognizing that preparation alone won't carry you. It means understanding that readiness is often a result of action, not a prerequisite for it. You grow into the role by stepping into it, not by waiting for permission. Think about a baby learning to walk. They don't wait until they have perfect balance. They try, they fall, they get up again. That's how we learn. Somewhere along the way, we started believing we had to be perfect on the first try. But perfection is a myth, and waiting for it only leads to paralysis. If you want to build momentum, don't start big. Start real. Send the message, make the call, write the first page. Say yes to the thing that scares you. Do something that forces your idea into the world. Because motion might feel good, but only action creates results. Only action turns ideas into impact. There's nothing wrong with planning, but planning should lead to movement, not replace it. The point of the map is the journey, and no matter how well you draw the route, you still have to walk the road. You still have to take the first step, and then the next. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's where the shift happens. That's where you begin to feel the difference. You stop just thinking about the kind of person you want to be, and you start becoming them. Through action, through motion with meaning, through choosing to move not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. And once you break through that initial resistance, you'll wonder why you waited so long. You'll realize the fear was just a story, and the step, the one that felt impossible, was always within reach. They talk a lot about success, about results, about finishing, but none of that happens unless you start. Starting is the gate you have to walk through. Starting is where everything changes, but starting is also where most people stop. There's a hesitation that lives right before the first step, a kind of invisible weight. You can feel it in your chest, in your stomach, in your thoughts. It says, what if I fail? What if people laugh? What if I'm not ready? It tells you to wait. It tells you to keep thinking about it. It whispers the most convincing lie of all. Tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow never delivers what today avoids. You can't move forward by standing still. And the truth is, you don't need all the answers to begin. You just need a reason that matters more than your excuses, more than your fear, more than your comfort. And that reason isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's buried under layers of doubt and procrastination, but it's there. And it usually sounds like this: I can't keep living the same day over and over again. That's the real motivation behind most change, the quiet realization that staying where you are is starting to cost more than the risk of going somewhere new. When you start, something happens that planning can't teach you. You gain momentum, not the dramatic kind, not the overnight viral kind, but the slow, quiet, powerful kind. The kind that compounds, the kind that grows, the kind that takes you further than you ever imagined, one uncomfortable step at a time. You don't need to be loud when you start. You don't need to announce it to the world. You just need to commit. Starting doesn't mean going fast. It means going forward. Even if it's slow, even if it's messy, even if you're scared, especially if you're scared. People wait years to feel ready, but readiness isn't a finish line you cross. It's a story you write as you move. The truth is, you become ready by doing. You become stronger by carrying the weight, not by staring at it. You become capable by starting when you don't feel capable. The people you admire, the ones who built something meaningful, they all had a first step. They all had a day one. And chances are, that day was filled with doubt, but they moved anyway. They understood something most people miss. The first step doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. Starting is where courage lives. Not the kind of courage that shows up in grand moments, but the quiet kind. The kind that lives in your decision to try again after a setback. The kind that's willing to look foolish, willing to be seen, willing to be vulnerable. Because that's what it takes. The people who go the farthest are usually the ones willing to look like a beginner the longest. And starting isn't a one-time thing. You'll need to start over and over again. Every new level of growth will ask you to begin again, to leave what's comfortable, to risk what you know for what could be. That's not failure, that's evolution. That's how progress works. There will be days when your progress feels invisible, when the work feels pointless, when it seems like no one notices and nothing's changing. But those are the days that build character. Those are the days that separate those who dabble from those who are devoted. Because the ones who keep showing up, they're the ones who finish. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for signs. The sign is already in your heart. The signal is the thing you can't stop thinking about, the thing you keep putting off, the thing you keep saying you'll do when you have time. That thing is calling you, and the only way to answer is to act. Starting is a commitment to yourself, a promise that your potential is worth the effort. It's not about being the best, it's about being better than the version of you who keeps waiting. It's about stepping into your story, even if you don't know how it ends. You'll get it wrong sometimes. You'll take the wrong path. You'll have to adjust, to pivot, to learn. But that's not a reason to avoid starting. That's the reason to start, because clarity comes from movement, not thought. You can't figure it all out in your head. You have to get your hands in the work. You have to test, to build, to break. That's how we find the right direction, by starting in any direction and paying attention. You might feel alone when you begin. You might feel like no one understands what you're trying to do. But the truth is, there's a whole world of people who've been where you are. People who doubted, feared, stumbled, and still chose to take that step. You are not alone in your uncertainty, and you won't be alone in your growth. Start small if you need to. Start scared if you have to, but start. Start where you are, with what you have, as who you are. Because waiting won't make it easier, doubting won't make it safer, and thinking won't make it real. Starting is what makes it real, and once you begin, you'll see something powerful. The world starts to move with you. People show up, opportunities appear, things begin to shift. Not because of luck, but because of alignment. Because life tends to respond to the ones who act, the ones who stop hesitating and start building. So whatever it is you've been putting off, the conversation, the idea, the habit, the project, stop asking if you're ready. Stop wondering if it's the right time and start. Start with doubt in your mind and fire in your gut. Start with trembling hands and an open heart. Start not because it's easy, but because it's time. Because the only way to change your life is to begin. So whatever it is you've been putting off, the conversation, the idea, the habit, the project, stop asking if you're ready. Stop wondering if it's the right time and start. Start with doubt in your mind and fire in your gut. Start with trembling hands and an open heart. Start not because it's easy, but because it's time. Because the only way to change your life is to begin. There's a myth we've been sold, the idea that discipline is something you either have or you don't, as if some people are born with this unshakable willpower, this magical ability to wake up early, stick to routines, ignore distractions, and do hard things without hesitation. And if you're not one of those people, well then, maybe you're just not cut out for it. But that's not how discipline works. Discipline isn't a trait. It's not a personality type. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows through use. It gets stronger with resistance. It develops through repetition. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up over and over again, especially on the days you don't feel like it. We tend to think we need more motivation, but what we really need is more reps. We wait for the perfect mood, the perfect conditions, the wave of inspiration that will suddenly make everything easy. But easy never builds strength. What builds strength is doing the thing when you'd rather not. When it's raining outside and you still go for that run. When you're tired and you still write that page. When no one is watching and you still give it your all. That's where discipline lives. Not in the highlight moments, but in the quiet ones, the ones no one claps for, the ones that seem small, insignificant, forgettable. But they're not, because over time, those small acts add up, they stack, and they start to shape how you see yourself. You stop saying, I want to be disciplined, and start saying, I am someone who follows through. That shift in identity, that's the real power. You don't suddenly become disciplined. You become disciplined by deciding in small ways to do the hard thing today, and then again tomorrow, and again the day after that. You don't need to climb the entire mountain today, you just need to take the next step. Discipline isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. And yes, it's hard, but it's supposed to be, because anything worth building requires effort. Effort is the filter. It's how the world distinguishes between those who talk and those who act. Discipline is what bridges the gap between intention and impact. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem unshakable, consistent, focused. You're not seeing a gift, you're seeing the practice. You're seeing the result of hundreds, maybe thousands of small decisions made in the direction of something meaningful. What you don't see is the early mornings when they didn't want to get up, the late nights when they could have quit, the uncomfortable conversations they had with themselves when no one else was around. That's what built their discipline. Not talent, not luck, not inspiration, but reps. The beautiful part is this: discipline is available to everyone. You don't have to wait to feel ready. You don't have to be the most talented. You just have to decide that this matters enough to keep showing up. You just have to be willing to keep your promises to yourself, especially when it's hard. And you will fail. You will miss a day. You will hit a wall. That's not weakness. That's reality. Discipline isn't about being flawless. It's about being faithful. It's about coming back even after you fall. It's about having the humility to start again and the courage to keep going. The people who go far aren't the ones who never mess up. They're the ones who don't let a mistake turn into a pattern. If discipline is a muscle, then failure is part of the workout. Every time you miss a rep, you're given the chance to choose. Do I quit or do I return? And every time you return, you reinforce the identity of someone who doesn't give up. That's the real victory. Not perfection, but persistence. Now here's something important. Discipline isn't about punishment. It's not about grinding yourself into exhaustion or pushing past every limit. It's about alignment. It's about saying, this thing I'm doing matters to me. I may not love every part of it, but I love what it leads to. That's what gives discipline meaning. Not the habit itself, but the result it creates, the character it shapes, the impact it makes. When you understand your why, discipline stops feeling like a chore. It starts feeling like a commitment to your future, to your growth, to the people you care about, and yes, to yourself. Because every act of discipline is a vote for the person you're becoming. It's easy to look at other people's success and think, I could never do that. But what if you looked at the process instead? What if you saw not just the end result, but the discipline it took to get there? And what if you realized that the same path, with your own version of it, is open to you? Because it is. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to become consistent with who you already are when you're at your best. You don't need more motivation. You need more moments of action, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's boring, especially when it's boring. And one more thing, you don't have to do it alone. Find people who value discipline, not perfection. Surround yourself with others who are trying, failing, learning, growing. Not just those who inspire you, but those who remind you that effort matters, that showing up matters, that you matter, even on the days you fall short. Discipline is not a destination, it's a direction, a way of living, a mindset that says, I'm willing to put in the work because who I'm becoming is worth the effort. And once you see it that way, you realize that discipline isn't something to be feared or forced. It's something to be practiced, something to be respected, and ultimately, something to be proud of.